Alright, before we continue, I should give a bit of a backstory into this particular film. After Norm of the North 1 became such a cultural icon, the people behind the film decided that the world could not live without a Norm of the North sequel. Actually, that's a bit of a lie. They thought that Norm of the North needed to have 2 sequels. There were originally going to be 2 45-minute direct-to-DVD films. The first one was to be titled Keys to the Kingdom, which this film was eventually called. The second one, which we're reviewing now, was going to be called The Arctic All-Stars. However, someone somewhere thought that maybe we could actually give this thing a theatrical release if it reached the 90-minute mark. So what they did was literally tape these 2 films together. There's only one real connection between the first half of this movie and the second one, and that's a little addition that was clearly very last minute. So I thought it'd be fair to give each of these parts their own review, because they're clearly not the same movie. So with everything that we've seen so far about this franchise, what do you think that Norm of the North 2.5 has to offer? So far, the franchise has been about protecting the environment, being a good king for your people, stopping bank robbers, so the next logical direction to take this franchise is, of course, a sports film. Norm of the North 2.5 is a sports film. Hey, Simba, we can kick Scar out of the Pride Lands if we beat him in a basketball game. That's actually not very far off in the plot of this film. Also, I'd like to get this misconception out of the way. This is not a Rob Schneider film. The only actor returning to this film from the first one is Olympia's. So, Rob Schneider was too good for this movie. Let me repeat that. Rob Schneider was too good for this film. Also, a correction on my part. Norm's son Quinn, well, they didn't just take Norm's model and they shrunk it. They used child Norm's model from the first movie. Sorry if I didn't notice that this movie would take the laziest option possible. Like I said, Rob Schneider, too good for this one. The second part starts with Norm returning home. He returns to wondrous celebration. I guess the people of the Arctic are very easily amused. Norm is a great king because in the first film, he stopped a problem that he caused. In the second one, he managed to stop a criminal that was framing him specifically. And as we all know, the greatest kings of all time are just spending 24/7 clearing their name and cleaning up their own mistakes. On the first day back on the job, Norm runs straight into some caribou ass. Apparently there's a traffic jam in the Arctic, and there's also a bunch of garbage everywhere. While Norm was gone, the Arctic was left in the control of his brother Stan. And not the previous king, the guy with the experience, who is still alive and is still in this movie. No, instead, we're going to give this job to the guy who was interested in putting on a show for humans, which arguably led to Mr. Green's people deciding that the Arctic would be great for summer homes. We just got started, and this plot is already on so much thin ice that you'd think that I'd shot it with my heat ray. Also, Norm has his cell phone, even though we never saw him get it back from his kids.
Norm, my friend, how's the far north?
Well, not much has actually happened since we talked, yesterday. It's been a few days at the absolute most. Needless to say, there's a bit of a problem putting in a sequel to the same film and just pretending it's a continuation from scene to scene. I don't know why they didn't just give this latter half, its own title card or whatever to make it a bit more clear as to what they actually did. Movies have done that in the past. One thing that hasn't improved is the dialogue.
No one can protect what's valuable to them, like themselves.
Yeah, Mr. Rabbit Man, that's why we don't have police officers, security guards, or, put money in banks. Because people are the best people for protecting their own stuff. Seriously, you run a bank! Norm comes across Stan playing a hockey game with his kid instead of doing a job that he was entrusted with.
Oh, sorry, King Norm. Sorry I'm not as responsible and kingly as you, your majesty.
Well, someone's pissy. It's been a while since I've watched the first movie, but I don't remember him being this incredibly bitter towards Norm. It just appears to be a new character trait out of nowhere. Speaking of being a bad king, Norm's brother got the hockey sticks by allowing a water company to harvest the ice of the Arctic. Okay, well, first of all, this is the only connection that the movie has with the first half. In the original, when the mayor first interviewed Norm, he gave a sponsorship for Far North Water. And this is probably the most half-assed connection I've seen in attempting to tape 2 movies together. Because Far North Water has nothing to do with the first half, at all. When the mayor talks about it, it just grinds the plot to a halt. And it feels like it has nothing to do with anything. It kind of feels like watching an actual commercial. If you only watched the first half of Norm in the North, you might think that Far North Water was an actual company that was actually sponsoring the movie. Secondly, that ad happened on the first day that Norm came to New York City. So, in the first couple of days, this company would have had to start gathering gathering ice in the Arctic, they need to make a deal with Stan, who does not have the ability to talk to humans, and they need to make their brand so popular that it'd be big enough to start sponsoring the mayor of New York City. And that's not even talking about the stupidity of gathering large ice blocks from the Arctic. I mean, it may be more practical than building vacation homes there, but I don't think that making a water company in the Arctic is a good idea either. Beyond there being so many less expensive places to collect water, there's a large chance that the water that they're collecting might be salt water. Also, Stan is very uncaring about the situation, which I know is out of character. In the first movie, his logic was, if the humans clap here, they won't crap here. Which is a lesson that seems to have been crapped out. The people stealing ice have Russian accents, act like stereotypical Russians, but they are absolutely not Russians at all. Because Russians do not play hockey, I guess. And hockey is a plot point of this movie. Also, the not Russians make the deal seem okay because, in their words, ice grows back. And I mean, if the temperature stays consistent, there will be a consistent amount of ice. So, technically, they have a point. Also, I don't know why they'd want ice that has lemming piss and polar bear shit, but that's their prerogative, I guess. Norm calls up Olympia, and they watch a commercial of the not Russian Prime Minister. This is all very confusing. I mean, most of the Norm franchise has been in New York, which is an American city. They don't pretend that it doesn't belong to the United States, so we can assume that all real-world countries exist in the Norm universe. A lot of cartoons make up Eastern European countries to make vague stereotypes like Jimmy Neutron or Ed, Edd n Eddy.
Slap, 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 clap, 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 slap, 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 clap, clap, clap.
But they don't usually go for something that's clearly and definitively the stereotype of a specific country, like Russia. Like, there's no mistaking. These are Russian stereotypes. These characters are written to be Russian stereotypes. The only stereotype that's not given to stereotypical Russian characters here is that they like to play hockey. And I guess Canadian stereotypes aren't as funny to them as Russian stereotypes. If you're wondering, the country that these guys are supposedly from is called Technikistan.
Technikistan loves hockey. They've won the gold medal in the last 10 straight nation games.
Yay for exposition! We absolutely had to be told that these guys are great hockey players. There's no way on earth that we would have been able to figure this out on our own with the information that has been presented to us. They go back and forth about how Stan had the right to do this because apparently the Arctic had written down laws and statutes, and a place with no computers or paper to do so. And Olympia has the ability to study all of these despite only knowing Norm and not having access to these Arctic laws. So Norm goes to the other person he can possibly go to, and Scuttle has some interesting advice.
If Stan got you into this mess, then make him get you out of it.
Yeah, if the burglar got you into this mess, then the burglar should be the one to get you out of this. Stan committed treason. The thing that a good king would do, at least one who cares about the government, is make sure that Stan has nothing to do with the monarchy ever again. I'm considering exile, but execution is also a sufficient answer. Either way, we'll be down one character, and the less characters in the movie, the better.
You must inspire him to believe in something else, something bigger than himself.
As my rule of king, if you do not make up for what you've done, you will no longer be allowed in the Arctic. Speaking of which, Norm is back, and he is king, and he has the power of a king. Why can't he just rescind the deal? Why couldn't he just tell the water company to fuck off? He outranks Stan now.
Basically, I need to make my brother a hero?
Exactly.
You are morons! I don't know how the series does it, but with each and every installment, it seems that each of these logical connections gets worse, and more tenuous, not to mention more strenuous.
Norm, like I told you, the only people who can save their home are those who live in it.
No, we don't need any firemen. Those guys are totally worthless. Talking Giant Rabbit told me that the best person to protect my home is me. This is legitimately the stupidest thing that I've ever heard. Even if we're talking about the scale of kings and countries, a lot of them wouldn't exist nowadays if their allies hadn't come and intervened. Norm sees his brother playing hockey, and then he gets an idea. He gets a flashback to the commercial that Vera and Olympia saw while he was on the phone with them. And despite just calling the rabbit, he calls Vera to have her go over and talk to the rabbit, to have a televised meeting with the Prime Minister of Tex-Mexistan. This is so Norm can challenge them to a game of hockey.
My bro has gone crazy. My bro is nuts.
You neglected your duties as king to play hockey with equipment that you literally sold your land for. I'm sorry, but I don't think that Nero here is one to talk.
Stan, listen to me. If we are playing for our home, nothing can stop us.
This is why every person ever at the Olympics has won a gold medal. So they get to work forming a hockey team in this movie that started with Norm earning the key to New York City.
If you stink, get out.
Okay, I don't think Stan means it like that.
I love Norm here. I just challenged this country for our resources, but it's okay. The game isn't about winning. It's all about having fun. Who cares if we lose? Just have some fun. What's the worst thing that can happen if we're defeated? Seriously though, you can't do this. It's all about the fun of the game shtick when something legitimate is at stake. After a montage, we have ourselves a team. Norm, of course, wants to make the team, but he can't because he's a king who earned the respect of his people twice now.
Yeah, Norm, we're trying to win here, not Arctic shake 'em to death.
Or Norm is seen as the laughingstock that he was at the beginning of the first movie. What the hell happened here? Are these two movies backwards or something? Seriously, at the start he was seen with respect that he didn't really earn. Now he doesn't have it after he apparently earned it.
The Arctic economy is a barter system largely consisting of meat, vegetables, and the occasional tchotchke. So in short, it means they're flat broke.
What the hell? Vegetables are a part of the Arctic's bartering system. Vegetables are a part of the Arctic's bartering system. Vegetables, like carrots and pumpkins, yes, and broccoli. The Arctic is known for growing these. Sure, my Arctic vacation home is the absolutely perfect place to do some gardening. I do it every summer there. Long story short, the rabbit funds the team because after Norm of the North won, Vera doesn't have a job anymore. Yeah, I just realized that. After Mr. Green got fired, we never see her actually do any work or anything related to work. So I can only assume that she doesn't have a job anymore. And yet, she still lives in a New York City apartment. And so, the Prime Minister of Snap-Neckistan comes up with a sinister idea, because Stan makes it clear that he doesn't know the meaning of teamwork, even though in the first movie he was able to organize a team.
Challenging the humans was a very brave thing to do.
Yes, challenging a country whose national sport is hockey to a hockey match while you don't even have a team instead of using your authority to kick them out of your land is the bravest political move in history. All I'm saying is that you might want to save some money now and stop planning your re-election campaign. Then the movie takes some time out to have the rabbit and the bird argue. It's supposed to be a joke, but all it really does is showcase that one of these two characters is completely redundant. Scuttle has been less important throughout the whole series, but Fong here breaks the logic of this world. So I say we split the difference and eat the both of them. All the advisors in the world wouldn't help the Norm franchise anyway. And right out of nowhere, Stan doesn't get the spirit of teamwork. Like, completely out of nowhere. I don't remember this being a part of his character anywhere else. It's like they said, this is a cliche that happens in sports film, so we absolutely need to have it here. But why are we using Norm of the North to make a sports movie at all? I don't think this franchise lends itself to this particular genre. You're fired! Get out of here! I never want to see your ass again! And if anyone else here questions my brilliant writing decisions, you'll find yourself out on the street faster than the shoe elves who stole my left sock!
The team looks good, Norm, but I would advise you to help Stan play for his home instead of himself.
I know.
So, you know that this dialogue is redundant, you know it's wrong, but you're gonna do it anyway. And then Scuttle says it for a third time, because this 91-minute film desperately needs filler. I'll be right back. I'm gonna be taking my Dr. Norm prescribed cyanide pills. I think it'll make viewing this movie a lot more pleasurable. So the people of Backharristan have a plan by getting Stan some sponsorships. It's amazing how the polar bear who can't speak human is making all of these deals with humans without any of the bears who can speak human knowing about it. The premise of Norm of the North is that Norm has this nigh one-of-a-kind power to speak to humans. I would think that this would be the one thing that you wouldn't throw out. So the games begin with Stan wanting to hog all of the credit. However, instead of playing against the workers of the water company, something that was never stipulated to the audience, the Arctic is going to have to face the national team of Neckties Are In. Ooh, this is an old one, but it's a good one. Simpsons did it! So tell me, why should I watch this movie when I could just watch Homer at the bat instead?
You will give 110%.
That's impossible. No one can give more than 100%. By definition, that is the most anyone can give.
And predictably, Mr. Arrogant can't get a single goal. And if he was really as good as the episode was telling me, then he should be able to score something. This is actually kind of a big problem. This half of the movie is completely predictable. I haven't seen a sports movie or television episode in quite some time, but as soon as hockey was mentioned, I knew exactly how this half would turn out. You do too. Not helping is the fact that they keep changing the characters to fit these cliches.
Oh, now the great King Norm is taking over hockey too, huh? You couldn't let me have this one, could you? Everything has to be about you.
Well, Stan, maybe you'd have the grounds to complain if you weren't, I don't know, given the opportunity to rule while Norm was away, because you continually annoyed him to get the position. And then you sold away your land for fucking hockey equipment. Also, listen to this line.
You ran the shows for tourists for years and loved every minute of it.
Did they really just do that? Am I hearing this line correctly? I can't be. I really can't be. They literally just pointed out their own plot hole. Plain and center. They figured out something that was wrong with their movie, and instead of trying to fix that, they just decided to say it out loud for everyone to hear, like a fart on the wind. You can't do that! Just saying that there's a plot hole does not make the plot hole go away. Now everyone sees that you have this plot hole.
Fong, you're a lifesaver! You know everything about hockey!
The only time that this was ever mentioned is that it wasn't mentioned. It was in pictures in Fong's office, which I didn't even notice on my first viewing of the film. Fong here never ever talked to Norm about knowing about hockey. So the rabbit becomes coach, and Stan pitches such a fit that the rabbit kicks off the best hockey player in the world, off of their team that they need to save their home. So they got 2 kids on their team, and a caribou who was stated to be less than human earlier in the movie. They're gonna do great.
Maria passes over to one of the seals. The seal to his seal partner.
Yeah, man, these seals really need names there, Jim.
Give me a moment.
Well, what happened to the cue cards, huh? Oh, no, okay, what are we gonna do, Jim?
We'll do it live, Rick! We'll do it live!
Sorry, Ruben.
Okay, I could understand not knowing about the bank thing in the first half. Maybe you just didn't know how banks worked. I mean, why do any sort of research at all when you're writing a script? But not knowing that you've given seals in your own movie names, making this joke completely not make sense within its own context, that just requires reading of your own script. But I get it, this script is so awful, I don't know why anybody would want to read it, even the people who wrote it. So apparently this national team isn't the real national team. So the Prime Minister of Tacky Mitnistan gets the real national team. Stan also comes to his senses and gets back on the team. And Norm gets nominated for goalie, even though he claims that he's not an athlete. And they're fighting for their home, and this is a game with serious matters. It's not just about letting the newbie play. If they don't win, there will be serious consequences. The final game begins, and it looks like they've got a star athlete to play against, the brother of the Prime Minister.
We will crush you.
Not if we crush you first.
I'm sorry. I don't speak beer.
Oh, I guess I really must have been mistaken. These guys aren't Russian after all.
You, seal, pass it to the other seal. No, not that seal. You know, you seals really need names.
Both running jokes in this movie are made on something factually incorrect, and somehow they manage to make this joke even worse the second time around. Asking the seal to pass the puck to the other seal, but he passes it to the wrong seal. There are only 2 seals on the team! How could one seal pass the puck to the wrong seal? It takes one reader. It takes 5 minutes to fix some of this stuff. Also, the not Russian team is made completely of robots.
Dad! The other team is robotic.
Now, son, that's a crude, outdated stereotype.
Yes, that is absolutely the stereotype we should avoid here. That is the one stereotype we do not want to broadcast. All of the other stereotypes, they're completely okay, though. So the Lemmings disable the robots, and then we get a game of 3-on-3. And why is this movie still going on? You know that Norm's team wins. Okay, wait a minute. Norm challenged the not Russians to a game of 3-on-3. Why is there a seal on their team as well? I guess in addition to all the other things this movie can't do, we can add counting to the list. I guess the lesson here is that you have to cheat to win, because consistently, the only team that won were the cheaters. That's it, I'm done. I am done with Norm of the North 2. For real this time. Good God, this movie was tedious. Whose brilliant idea was it to make a sequel to Norm of the North? Next thing you're going to be telling me is that they're going to make a third one.
Actually, about that, you see...
What was that? Oh, okay, I just got some new information. And I have some good news, and I have some bad news. The good news is that they're not making another Norm of the North sequel. The bad news is that they're making 2.